Welcome to Vigorous Update. I'm Coach Steve. In this video, I want to discuss how it is going with my post-cycle therapy and give you guys an update on the status of my non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which was diagnosed about 6 weeks ago. I did blood work last Sunday, so we'll discuss that in that segment about non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. But let me give you guys a spoiler alert, because I haven't injected any steroids for 5.5 weeks now. My serum total testosterone level is 171 nanograms per deciliter, and my serum estrogen serum estradiol came back around 13 picograms per milliliter. So I'm clinically androgen deficient, but I'm still in a good mood, and honestly, I'm probably in a better mood than I was when I was on cycle. So let's go over everything and discuss how I feel before we go into the blood work. So let me preface this video by explaining why I'm doing post-cycle therapy in the first place after 8 years of blasting and cruising. About 6 weeks ago, I did a routine checkup and had an ultrasound done of my lower abdomen. Most of my organs were okay, but my liver came back with symptoms of mild to moderate non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. After discussing these results with a hepatologist, I decided to come off cycle in an attempt to resolve this issue as soon as possible, because my initial plan was to go into a cutting phase and increase my dosages along the way. But what I noticed over the last few years is that fat loss has become increasingly difficult, and that's one of the symptoms of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, because the liver is saturated with a little bit of fat, and it makes the transfer of long-chain, medium-chain triglycerides into short-chain triglycerides a little bit more difficult. So now these triglycerides float into the bloodstream and get redeposited as body fat, whereas ideally you would burn them away with activity and promote fat loss of body fat reserves, right? So that's become increasingly difficult. So I'm not going to procrastinate. I decided to come off cycle and do everything in my power to resolve this non-alcoholic fatty liver disease as soon as possible. So now it's been 5.5 weeks since my last injection. Previously, I was using 250 milligrams of testosterone enanthate and 200 milligrams of primobolan enanthate per week. Now, both of these compounds are suspended in castor oil, which extends the half-life to maybe up to 34 days because the castor oil stays in the depot reasonably longer. Now, ever since I stopped injecting, I asked my deep tissue massage therapist to put her elbows into my upper glutes, which is my common injection site. So most of the oil has already dissipated and the scar tissue is pretty much gone. So I'm assuming that most of the testosterone enanthate and primobolan enanthate in castor oil has already been absorbed and metabolized. But judging my blood work results of 171 nanograms per deciliter of my total testosterone level, I think there's some lingering testosterone left 5.5 weeks after the injection. And when you look at the active life of an enanthate ester, whether that's testosterone enanthate or primobolan enanthate, it has a half-life of 5 to 10 days. And then you extend that to the active life, which is usually about 5 times the half-life. So that will be an active life of 50 to 60 days. And now we're around day 50. So I see that a little bit of testosterone is left in my bloodstream, indicating that I'm not ready to officially start post-cycle therapy yet, because you want your testosterone levels to decline to the lowest possible amount, so there's no negative feedback on the hypothalamus releasing gonadotropin releasing hormone, to which the pituitary gland responds and releases luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, which is part of the normal functioning of the hypothalamic pituitary testis axis. So if you want to produce testosterone naturally again, all the hormones need to decline for the hypothalamus to signal the pituitary to signal the testes. Yeah, that's how you want to start your PCT correctly. And all this information is already displayed in the PCT ebook. Shameless plug, but if you're going to do PCT relatively soon, I would highly advise you to buy that PCT ebook. All the details are completely described in there. So I haven't injected any anabolic steroids for the last 5.5 weeks. But to be fair and 100% transparent with you guys, I did use 2 units of growth hormone per day, because growth hormone doesn't downregulate the HPTA and probably makes PCT a little bit more tolerable, because you're still an anabolic agent that helps with volume and training capacity and a little bit of fat loss. So I did lose a little bit of fat over the last 5.5 weeks, but I've also been following 1 meal per day. So my days are basically structured like this. I wake up, I take my growth hormone injection. A little bit later, I do 30 minutes of cardio. Then I do intermittent fasting, or procrastinating to cook, whatever term you prefer. I wait all day. Then I have a protein shake. I go to the gym, and then I have one large meal of about 2,000 calories, consisting of sea bass, salmon, chia seeds, and 5 whole eggs. Why 5 whole eggs? because at one point I'm going to need that cholesterol for testosterone production. Yeah? When the fertility drugs like an ACG, HMG, triptorelin, Nolvadex, Clomid, or whatever serum you prefer to use during PCT, when those come in, I need dietary cholesterol to help with the testosterone, estrogen, DHEA, pregnenolone synthesis. Yep. So I'm preloading, I'm preloading my cholesterol with 5 whole eggs per day. So far, my cholesterol levels are good. I'll show you in the blood work a little bit later. So how do I feel on 171 nanograms per deciliter? Honestly, I feel fine. Honestly, I feel fine. I'm a little bit more irritable when situations occur. And I think that's because my testosterone and estrogen are both low. But overall, I feel good. And my wife has mentioned to me several times that my mood is actually a lot better compared to when I was on cycle, especially when I added the Primobolan on top to the generous hormone replacement that I was on. Because Primo is still a DHT-based compound, and it gives you a little bit of an aggressive edge. And, considering I was mostly in a caloric surplus before I decided to come off cycle, I honestly think that aggressive edge came from Primobolan and not from the lack of calories. So, mood is good. Energy levels are good. I'm productive. I'm focused. I'm energetic. Honestly, I feel good, guys. Even without, the exogenous hormones and having my testosterone and estrogen levels did low. It's good until I go to the gym. And then I'm miserable. To be honest, I'm 100% miserable because the training capacity is not really there. I want to train to failure, but I know I shouldn't because I don't have the hormones to actually help me recover from training to failure. And even though I'm on a little bit of growth hormone, growth hormone works synergistically with anabolic steroids. And when the anabolic steroids are not there, growth hormone is just a volumizing cosmetic effect with a little bit of anti-aging properties, but it's not going to help you recover from heavy hypertrophy workouts. You still need a little bit of androgens and a calorie surplus to recover 100%. So right now, I'm just training to maintain and prevent rhabdomyolysis because if I were to stop training, of course, at one point, all this protein stored within my skeletal muscle is going to leak into the bloodstream and tax my kidneys. So I'm just training to maintain on a push-pull leg split, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That's enough to maintain this size. 5.5 weeks after my last injection with growth hormone in the mix, I'm still 101.5 kilos on my lowest day. So Sunday before I cheat meal, about 101.5 kilos. And today I'm probably 102 kilos. So I'm still hovering around the 100 kilos for now. Let's see how long that lasts. And when I go to the gym, it's pretty basic. I just train with moderate intensity. I'm trying to touch the same weights that I used to touch when I was on cycle. And I'm still relatively close, maybe one increment down, but I'm certainly not in the same rep range. So, for example, yesterday I did front squats with 3 plates in the Smith machine. And normally I would get like 5 or 6 reps. Free weight. I normally do free weight. Yeah, keep that in mind. And now in the Smith machine, I got 2 reps. And I didn't really feel confident to do a third one. So I'm still touching the same weight, albeit in the Smith machine. But it's a lot less reps. Yeah, the same with the leg press. Normally I would do 11 plates, and now I'm doing 9 plates for 6 reps. So it's, 2 increments short of my maximum weight. I'm just trying to keep as much muscle as I can without tearing myself apart because I don't have any recovery capability besides food and growth hormone in this scenario. Yeah, so we're so far so good. I must say, so far so good. I feel good. My training capacity is good enough. And luckily for myself and my wife, my libido is surprisingly good. And even though my testosterone and estrogen levels are pretty much below the reference range, I think it's the ratio between testosterone and estrogen that still gives me favorable libido. So my total testosterone is 171 nanograms per deciliter, which is a 13-to-1 ratio with a serum estradiol level of 13 picograms per milliliter. So you can calculate this ratio by dividing your total testosterone in nanograms per deciliter by serum estradiol in picograms per milliliter. And that ratio should fall between 13 to 18 to 1 on your estradiol. And that usually gives people the best libido. Now I'm taking total testosterone here because total testosterone, even when it's bound to sexual hormone binding globulin, still gets delivered to tissue through the sexual hormone binding globulin receptor complex. So even though testosterone is bound to sexual hormone binding globulin, it doesn't mean it's inactive. When it's bind to albumin loosely, it's inactive, but sexual hormone globulin can still deliver testosterone to tissue, which contributes to sex drive. I've mentioned this several times before. I just want to remind you guys. So over the last 5 weeks, what did I change to my protocol? I stopped injecting. I continued with the growth hormone. About 2 weeks after the last injection, I stopped DHEA and pregnenolone because I want those levels to decline as well. I don't want any exogenous hormones in my system anymore. And I also stopped the diethylmethane because I actually want high serum estrogen levels, because serum estrogen levels on testosterone and primobolan were around 37.5 picograms per milliliter, and that's a very good ratio for me. So even though you stop the testosterone, which stops the conversion of estrogen, you don't want to suppress that any further with aromatase inhibitors or diethylmethane, because estrogen upregulates luteinizing hormone receptors. And for all you biology majors out there, that's the luteinizing hormone choriogonadotropin receptor, which responds both to LH and ACG. And whether that ACG comes from pregnil or the LH comes from human menopausal gonadotropin or is produced naturally by the pituitary gland, that's what the LHCG receptor responds to. And serum estradiol upregulates LHCG receptor sensitivity. So you don't want serum estradiol to be too low when you go into PCT, because otherwise it won't probably be as successful as it should be, and restore HPTA to its full capacity, so to say. So I took out the diethylmethane a long time ago, but even though my serum estradiol is still reasonably low, it's certainly a little bit higher than where it would be if I kept using aromatase inhibitors or diethylmethane. So based on my total testosterone level, I feel that there's still a little bit of lingering testosterone enanthate left. And there could also be a little bit of lingering primobolan left, but my clinic doesn't offer a serum methanolone concentration test. So I'm just going to assume that there's still a little bit of primo left based on my total testosterone level. So I'm going to wait another week and then start my PCT officially. So wait another week, let everything decline to as low as it can be. That's going to be about 55 days after my last injection. And then I'm going to start PCT. So with that out of the way, let's discuss what I've been doing to resolve the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and go over my latest blood work results. So let's discuss the supplementation that I've been doing for the last 5 weeks in an attempt to cure this issue. I take either 1,000 milligrams of TUDCA or 1,500 milligrams of UDCA to improve bile acid production and increase bile acid flow. Now, when you fast or you follow a 1 meal per day diet, you don't really have anything in the intestinal tract for the bile acids, the toxins, the metabolic waste products to bind to. So I supplement with fiber mixed with Himalaya pink salt, which increases water retention in the intestinal tract. So now you have fiber and a little bit of water to move everything down into the stool. Otherwise, these bile acids, metabolic waste products, and toxins would simply get reabsorbed when there's no intestinal mass to bind to. So I supplement from that. And the reason why I alternate between TUDCA and UDCA is because delivery of TUDCA from the States, I order from NutriCost, is excruciatingly slow, and I usually run out of TUDCA before the next bottle arrives because I can only order one bottle at a time to bypass importation taxes. So I buy UDCA locally. Thank you, Chris Vigorous, for pointing that out. I have pharmaceutical grade, FDA approved UDCA, 1,500 milligrams per day. And when I have TUDCA in stock, I run 1,000 milligrams per day to improve bile acid production. I use 1,800 milligrams of calcium disodium EDTA as a chelation formula to detoxify heavy metals from my system, as well as 1,000 milligrams of calcium diglucarate to help with glucocoronation of toxins and hormones. I'm using 800 IUs of vitamin E mixed tocopherols and tocotrienols, if I pronounce that correctly. And vitamin E helps to lower inflammation within the liver, but also in the testicles, and actually contributes to spermatogenesis and the production of testosterone when I'm ready to incorporate ACG, HMG, or any of the other fertility drugs later on during PCT. So it's a win-win to add 800 IUs of vitamin E for both my liver and my testicles in testosterone production. I'm using an extensive glutathione stack of 400 milligrams SAM-E, 2,000 milligrams of N-acetylcysteine, and 1,000 milligrams reduced glutathione, which is orally bioavailable. I can tell from the loss of pigmentation in my skin, I've gotten significantly paler since adding the reduced glutathione to my supplementation protocol. So I'm adding all those three to increase glutathione content within the liver. SAM-E contributes to that. And of course, increase glutathione content within the rest of the tissue. Now, ideally, I'd replace this stack with injectable glutathione, but it's not really readily available here. And even though the beauty clinics sell it under the table for skin whitening, it's not something you can easily get. And, thanks to COVID, it's not something you easily order online. So this is going to be the glutathione stack to improve my liver health. I was getting about 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams of choline from my diet alone, but that clearly wasn't enough to prevent the progression of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And now that I switched to a 1 meal per day diet approach, I definitely need to increase my choline intake. So I'm supplementing with choline, 2,000 milligrams of choline coming from 4,000 milligrams of choline and isomaltol per day. So that's 50% choline. And 1,000 milligrams of phosphatidylcholine coming from sunflowers, not from soy lecithin. I don't want to be a soy boy. No soy boys allowed. I'm using 600 milligrams of milk thistle extract, silymarin to improve liver health overall. And then I was using 1,000 milligrams of berberine and 1,000 milligrams of metformin. But after seeing my IGF-1 testing results, I think I'm going to take those out. On the ketogenic diet, I don't really need to increase insulin sensitivity that much, especially considering I'm only eating 1 meal per day. I just wanted to see if berberine and metformin had a beneficial effect regarding the resolvement of the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which I can't really find any conclusive evidence based on my blood work results. And because, my serum IGF-1 levels have decreased significantly, I'm just going to move them to Sunday, which is the only day that I actually have carbohydrates. I exclude carbohydrates from the diet for 6 days out of the week, which should increase insulin sensitivity more than enough by itself already. And by having a surplus of carbohydrates on Sunday and Sunday alone, I'm just going to have 500 milligrams of berberine and 500 milligrams of metformin before bed at the end of my refeed, to improve insulin sensitivity for the following days afterwards. So that's basically my NAFLD supplement stack. I'm taking several other supplements as well, which could contribute to overall liver health. You can find those on my website, VigorousSteve.com, under the article Coach Steve's Year-Round Supplement Stack. I'm taking, for example, zinc, which I'm taking mostly for testosterone production to come, but of course it also contributes to overall liver health. I'm taking carnitine, again for androgen receptor sensitivity, contributes to liver health and lowers gamma GT levels. I'm taking a B100 complex and several other supplements which, marginally increase liver health as well. So that's the all-around liver stack and everything that I'm doing that contributes to overall liver health. Now with that out of the way, let's dive into the blood work and see what has improved and what hasn't improved. I've got my recent blood work results right here on my phone, but I'll overlay them here on the screen so you guys can read it and analyze it with me. Let's go over the analysis of the urine first, because I always make sure that I go in hydrated. The last thing you want to do is do your blood work dehydrated, because when you're even mildly dehydrated, your hematocrit could be skewed or your kidney markers could be skewed, giving you a false sense of alarm. So I always make sure that I drink 1.5 to 2 liters of water. And you can easily see that on your urinalysis by the specific gravity, which should be at the bottom of the reference range. So my value is 1.003 on a range of 1.003 to 1.03. The bottom of the range, but you should have pH in the middle of the range, so it's not too basic or not too acidic. So everything is pretty non-eventful, no protein, no blood, no nitrates, no ketone, no bilirubin, no leukocytes. Nothing too eventful. I'm hydrated. Let's move on to the complete blood count. My white blood cells increased a little bit over the last 5 weeks. Normally on cycle, they're a little bit on the low end, between 4,000 to 5,000 cells per cubic meter. And right now they're around 5,500 cells per cubic meter. So maybe the primobolan is still working. Keep in mind that white blood cells actually have androgen receptors, unlike red blood cells or lipoproteins. And by having supraphysiological dosages or concentrations of anabolic steroids in your bloodstream, white blood cell count is going to go down a little bit. Now, if you see a white blood cell count of 2,000 to 3,000, it's alarming. But from my experience, 4,000, 5,000 around the bottom of the reference range is reasonably common for anabolic steroid users. So mine increased a little bit, and I expect that to increase a little bit more over time, probably ending up around 6,000 cells per cubic meter. Now, my hemoglobin is totally fine, in range. My hematocrit is in range. It was 53% 5 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago when I did my last blood work check. So it decreased a little bit with the exclusion of primobolan. I noticed that when I added in Primobolan, my hematocrit went up slowly and steadily, but the last blood work results showed 53% hematocrit. And since I'm always hydrated consistently, for me, it's not a reason to start donating yet. Usually I start donating around 55%, bringing me down to the top of the reference range of about 52%. So again, I didn't need to donate because the Primobolan dose was reasonably low. And now that it's out of my system, hematocrit is automatically coming back into range. My red blood cell count is towards the top of the reference range, but it's in range. Mean corpulus volume is normal. Mean corpulus hemoglobin is normal. So that's the size of the red blood cell or the size of the hemoglobin. So that doesn't indicate an iron deficiency. So, or vitamin B9 or B12 deficiency. So basically my complete blood count is pretty non-eventful. Looks good. Looks like it improved a little bit from the last test, but the last test was also pretty non-eventful. So let's fast forward a little bit to serum iron and ferritin levels, because both these markers are related to complete blood count and red blood cell production. And because I was using a chelation formula in the form of calcium disodium EDTA, I was wondering if iron and ferritin was going to decline accordingly. I was wondering if serum iron was going to go down because I'm increasing the chelation of iron and heavy metals alongside of it. Now, serum iron and ferritin did decline since the last blood work results, and I can't really remember the results off the top of my head, so I'll overlay them here so you guys can follow along and compare the two blood work results. I can't really say that EDTA is promoting the chelation and excretion of iron from my body. I think the reduction is mostly related to a restricted dietary intake. So I'll keep my eye on it. I'll continue with the EDTA for the next 3 weeks when I plan to do blood work again after I finished a period of ACG, HMG, or triptorelin, depending on what I can source and what I can use, to make sure that I have sufficient serum iron and ferritin levels for normal red blood cell production. Because when serum iron levels deplete, you'll see that red blood cell count goes up to compensate for the lack of oxygen carrying capacity. The hemoglobin doesn't have sufficient amount of iron. You can't carry enough oxygen around, and to compensate, red blood cell count production goes up. And you can easily diagnose an iron deficiency when you see high red blood cell count, but a low mean corpulus volume and a low mean corpulus hemoglobin, meaning that you have a very large amount of red blood cells to increase the oxygen carrying capacity, but they're small, resulting in a normal or within range hematocrit level. Yeah, keep that in mind. That's one of the early signs of iron deficiency, and that's what I'm trying to prevent. So as soon as I see my iron levels go down, my red blood cell count should still be normal size. And if that's the case, I'm going to discontinue the EDTA supplementation. Okay, let's go back to the blood chemistry and continue from there. My blood glucose level was 92 milligrams per deciliter. I frequently check that at home because I have an AccuCheck glucometer. I'm usually between 68 to 75 upon waking, but I think because I'm doing 1 meal per day, which contains a decent amount of protein per serving, I think it's almost 150 grams of protein in one sitting, and then 50 grams of protein before the workout, so 200 grams of protein per day. So I think I got a little bit of gluconeogenesis over the night. Again, it's not an alarming glucose level upon waking. If I ever see that over 100 milligrams per deciliter, I would be concerned. But normally when I check it during the day, it's like 68 to 75, sometimes 80 if I had a coffee, a little bit higher if I injected growth hormone because that promotes gluconeogenesis as well. So that's regarding the blood glucose levels. BUN 21.6 in range, creatinine 1.3 milligrams per deciliter, which is out of range, but for a big bodybuilder, that's a pretty normal reading. Usually, to be honest, my creatinine fluctuates between 1.5 to 1.6 milligrams per deciliter, which is way higher than I want it to be, but it's been like that for years now. And it doesn't seem to change. It doesn't seem to go up unless I check it after a leg day. And it doesn't really seem to go down unless I go off cycle and I kind of half-ass it in the gym. So that's the case right now. My creatinine went down from an average 1.5 to a 1.3. Astragalus root extract did reduce my cystatin C levels over the last few years. Usually I'm around 1, and now I'm at 0.7. And unlike creatinine, which is a byproduct of muscle mass, and that's going to increase, of course, when you build more muscle means more creatinine, but it doesn't mean you have impaired kidney function. Cystatin C isn't related to muscle mass, so that's a more indicative blood work marker for kidney function and kidney health compared to creatinine. I check that twice per year because it's an outsourced test. It's a little bit more expensive. And sometimes it takes up to 2 weeks to get the results back, so I don't frequently test it, just 2 times per year. It's never been out of range, but after including astragalus root extract to my supplementation protocol, I noticed that it's been steadily declining even though my muscle mass has gone up. So that's a beneficial effect of astragalus root extract. Uric acid, 4.8 milligrams per deciliter, which is a little bit lower than normal, but I'm only eating 1 meal per day and I'm still drinking a lot of water. CPK is 1466 units per liter, which you would think is high, but I don't have a heart attack, which is a pretty common occurrence when you analyze your blood work results with an inexperienced doctor. They see your CPK 1500, 2000, 3000, 5000, maybe even 7000. They think you had a heart attack, but in reality, it's just because you train very, very hard. And certain performance enhancing drugs, like clenbuterol, for example, they stimulate the heart to beat faster and more intensely, which is going to increase your CPK levels further. So in my case, 1366 units per liter, it just means that I'm still training hard enough. Androgen deficient bicep, moderately elevated CPK levels, I think they're going to stay around the same. C-reactive protein, high sensitivity test, like I advise everybody to do. Yeah, not a conventional high sensitivity test. 0.3 milligrams per liter, coming down from, let's say, 0.5, 1 milligram per liter when I'm using anabolic steroids in pharmaceutical grade castor oil, which is only a marginal reduction, but my systemic inflammation was already low and now it's even lower. Now we'll group gamma GT with the liver function test because gamma GT is another liver function marker. So let's go over the lipid profile first. Cholesterol, 173 milligrams per deciliter, a little bit lower than normal, but I'm usually below 200 milligrams per deciliter. As soon as I stopped injecting testosterone, I discontinued the citrus bergamot because I don't need cholesterol medication when I'm not using anabolic steroids. So now my cholesterol is still in range. Of course, when your diet mostly consists of fish, your cholesterol doesn't really go up that much. So now I'm actively trying to increase my cholesterol levels by supplementing with 5 whole eggs per day, which is about, I think it's almost 1,500, maybe even 2,000 milligrams of dietary cholesterol per day. So far, it didn't increase my cholesterol levels yet. Triglycerides, 45 milligrams per deciliter, all good. Thank you. Carnitine, HDL cholesterol, below the reference range at 55 milligrams per deciliter. I'm sure that's going to go up relatively soon. Normally, it's between 50 to 60 milligrams per deciliter on testosterone only, and it went down to, man, what was it? I'll overlay it here in the side. I think it was around 40, 50 milligrams per deciliter, somewhere between there when I added in the Primo. LDL cholesterol, 107 milligrams per deciliter, so that came down a little bit from 110, 115 milligrams per deciliter, where it usually is on cycle. Luckily for me, I don't really have a problem with lipids, but I do have a problem with my non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So let's go over the liver function test, which is the most interesting part of this whole video, which is probably already over 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes after I'm done editing. Okay, total protein, which is not really a liver function test, but it combined with the liver function, 6.9 grams per deciliter, albumin 4.3, globulin 2.6, albumin to globulin ratio 1.7, a little bit high, but still within range. Total bilirubin and delect bilirubin both in range. Surprisingly, total bilirubin is low, reasonably low on this range. Nothing too eventful. Alkaline phosphate, 61 units per liter in range. Gamma GT, 10 IUs per liter, which is slightly below the reference range, but both carnitine and caffeine, are known to reduce gamma GT levels significantly. So I have 2 cups of coffee per day and about 3,000 milligrams of oral L-carnitine L-taltrate per day. So that's why my gamma GT levels are low, and I've always been low. I've never seen them high. I've seen them high on clients, especially after halotestin or Superdrol cycles of 2 weeks, 3 weeks before a contest. And if you ever see your gamma GT levels over 30 IUs per liter, it probably already means you have a little bit of liver damage because it's contained within the cell membrane. So when you have an abnormal amount of destruction of the hepatocytes, your gamma GT levels go up. So whereas cystatin C is a true indicator of kidney function and kidney health, gamma GT is a true indicator of liver function and liver health. So luckily, even though I have a non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, gamma GT levels are always in range. And that finally brings us to the liver enzymes, which unfortunately only marginally decreased over the last 6 weeks. I'll put up the blood work results from last Sunday compared to the one from 6 weeks ago so you guys can compare. It's a little bit discouraging, to be honest, because I put everything into place to improve the state of my non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. But when I see these results, it means that I'm definitely not getting close to having this non-alcoholic fatty liver disease issue resolved. Now, I do know that both these aminotransferases are also found in skeletal muscle. And when you train with some sort of intensity, the ALT and AST enzymes can leak into the bloodstream and increase serum concentrations. But it's usually mostly the case with the AST enzyme over the ALT enzyme. And you see when you compare both blood work results between last Sunday and 6 weeks ago, is that my ALT went down more compared to my AST. So I feel that the training is keeping these enzymes elevated slightly. And even when you train at moderate intensity, these aminotransferases might stay elevated in the bloodstream for up to 7 days. So the next time I do blood work, I'm going to take a week off from training and see how much the training impacts these liver enzymes and give me a true indication of the state of my non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, because I feel that the training is elevating these levels and skewing the results a little bit. And if these liver enzymes are still significantly elevated by the time I do blood work again after taking a whole week off from training, it just means I have a long road ahead of me compared to the time that I thought I'd need to resolve this issue. Now, it could be that it's still elevated from the metformin medication. I already took the Accutane out 6 weeks ago, so that shouldn't impact liver enzymes anymore. That's already completely metabolized. 1 meal per day, fasting maybe 1 or 2 days per week, getting a sufficient amount of fiber to help with the detoxification process. I'm getting my TUDCA and UDCA in, Silymarin and all the other liver supplements. So I'm a little bit discouraged, but hey, we're just going to go full steam ahead and keep trucking along and do this PCT. I'm pretty sure liver enzymes will go up a little bit when they start introducing the SERMs, the Nolvadex and the Clomid, because those are known to increase liver enzymes as well. So I have to keep that into consideration. I'll check my liver enzymes again when I finish the second phase of post-cycle therapy before I start phase 3 with the treatment of selective estrogen receptor modulators. In this case, it's going to be Nolvadex and Clomid, which are known to raise liver enzymes as well. So in between phase 2 and 3, I'll check my blood work markers again. Hopefully by that time, my liver enzymes have increased a little bit better. And if that's not the case, I'll have to look at my diet and see if I need to make any adjustments there. Again, everything contributes, and I'm trying to resolve this issue as fast as possible. Okay, so that's the liver health out of the way. Let's go back to the hormone levels, which we already discussed a little bit earlier in this video, but it's good to touch up on it again. Estradiol, exactly 13 picograms per milliliter. Testosterone, total testosterone, 171.09 nanograms per deciliter. Free testosterone, 3.06 nanograms per deciliter. And bioavailable testosterone, 71.6 nanograms per deciliter. Estradiol is technically in range, but it's a little bit on the low side. And testosterone, free, and bioavailable are all low. Sexual binding globulin went up. So, judging by the ratio between total testosterone and free testosterone, a decent amount of that is bound to either sexual binding globulin or albumin. Now you see that follicle-stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone are low, but they've increased compared to before. So I'm slowly but marginally already restoring my HPTA. Now, ideally, I bring up those levels with triptorelin, which stimulate the pituitary gland to release both luteinizing hormone and follicle-stimulating hormone. So far, I haven't been able to get a prescription for triptorelin, and I don't want to use underground lab triptorelin because I don't know what the potency is, if it's even triptorelin at all. So if I can get a prescription for triptorelin, I will use that to start the second phase of post-cycle therapy. And if I can't find it or I can't find HMG, I will just use ACG and start that next week. So it highly depends on what I can source. If I can get a prescription for triptorelin, I prefer to use that. But if that's not the case, I will use pharmaceutical grade ACG to start the second phase of post-cycle therapy. and promote testosterone production within the testicles and, of course, semen production as a result of that. And while we're on the subject of spermatogenesis, what I mentioned in the video about using ACG on cycle to maintain or restore testicular volume and increase fertility is that alternatively, certain dosages of testosterone can actually enter the testicles and stimulate the Sertoli cells to produce semen by themselves again without the need of ACG. And now I can verify that by excluding the testosterone from my cycle, my testicle size has come down. My testicles have shrunk because I stopped using testosterone. So that's more proof that in my case and in the case of some of my clients, that exogenous testosterone is able to enter the testicles and stimulate the Sertoli cells into spermatogenesis, increasing overall testicular size. And now that I stopped injecting, this spermatogenesis shut down or downregulated because there's not so much testosterone in serum anymore, and my testicles shrunk. So it's the case for me. It might not be the case for you, but it's definitely noticeable. Semen volume has not gone down. Again, selenium intake is sufficient, so semen volume is still commendable, respectable, however you want to call it. But I do notice that my testicles have shrunk after stopping testosterone, which is a little bit counterintuitive, but that's just the reality of it. Now, before we close off this video, I briefly want to discuss my IGF-1 results. After 5 weeks of 1,000 milligrams of berberine per day and 1,000 milligrams of metformin per day, my serum IGF-1 levels came back at 67.1 nanograms per milliliter, which is very, very low considering I'm still using 2 units of growth hormone per day. Now, when I don't use metformin and use berberine sparingly at 500 milligrams, maybe 2 to 3 times per week, on 2 units of growth hormone per day, my serum IGF-1 levels usually hover around 200 nanograms per milliliter. So now I've effectively reduced serum IGF-1 concentrations with 60%, 2/3, going from 200 nanograms per milliliter down to 70 nanograms per milliliter, which is fine if you want to focus on anti-aging. But to me, it's a little bit too much anti-aging for comfort. And I do notice that my recovery capability has decreased over the last few weeks, even though my training intensity has decreased as well. So I'm going to use the metformin and the berberine sparingly, only once per week, 500 milligrams berberine and 500 milligrams metformin after a refeed. And that's going to be it. And hopefully my serum IGF-1 concentrations will restore a little bit because I will continue with 2 units of growth hormone because these biceps need a little bit of anabolic incentive to stay present. And I'm still training, so I think I'm entitled to a little bit of growth hormone in this post-cycle therapy. So that pretty much sums it up. Man, this was a long video, but it contained all the relevant information and everything that you would like to know, assuming you would like to know, regarding the situation of post-cycle therapy and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. If it was helpful, you know where the like button is. It's somewhere down below. If the subscribe button isn't gray, it's red. Make it gray by subscribing and press the notification bell button so you get notified every time I upload a lengthy video or a short video, but most of them are quite lengthy. That's why I don't upload every day. Growth Hormone and IGF-1 ebook is going to launch very, very soon. Stay tuned for that. I'll announce it on my Instagram when it is live for purchase. And then after that, I'll finalize the comprehensive guide to responsible insulin use shortly after that. And then everybody knows how to use these peptides responsibly and dose them accurately for the best possible results with the least amount of side effects. Okay, and that pretty much wraps it up. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.